Welcome to the Multidimensional Human Podcast. I'm Rachel Archelaus. Today we're going to talk about gender and how I came to realize that I was trans and what that means to me and what it means to live in a society that not only doesn't validate my extrasensoriness, but also now doesn't validate my gender and all of that. So it's going to be an interesting ride. I'm going to really go back to the beginning because gender is not something that we really choose. It's something that we feel into. It's something we recognize in ourselves. Gender itself is a construct. I really don't love labels. I don't love differentiating so much, but I think that's just because I'm a higher dimensional being. I'm not used to having so much groundedness, so many points of difference, right? Even having a body was difficult for me to get used to. But I've come a long way. I've become a lot more grounded over the last few years. I've become a lot more involved, a lot more loving, compassionate, a lot more plugged in, for sure. And it's definitely increased my happiness to be that way. And so I'm very happy to be in the place that I'm in where I do have labels and I do relate to people and I have more friendships and I do work out my body, and it's definitely a good place to be. That being said, what does gender even mean? Well, the first time I really ever considered my gender was when I was about, I think, 6 or 7, and I was playing in my backyard with my uncle, who's 10 years older than me. So he was a teenager, and an older teen. And I was going to take off my shirt to play. And he's like, "Oh, I don't know about that. You should go talk to your mom." In that moment, I realized, oh, there's a difference between being a boy and a girl. I guess girls can't just run around without a shirt on. And so that was really the first time it ever dawned on me that there was any kind of a difference there. And then when I was like 12 years old, I remember all these things. Isn't that interesting? I don't really have like specific memories of much from being young. But I remember walking through the parking lot at the mall, going into, I believe, JCPenney, and I was wearing these oversized corduroy work pants. They were kind of like hanging off my hips. They were boys' pants. They were sandy colored. Actually, I had my father's t-shirt on from like the 70s. It was like really worn and almost see-through. And that is the first moment I ever felt sexy. That was it for me. Oversized pants and like a worn out t-shirt. That was it. I loved it. And I've never really connected with the word sexy because I think kind of like when my friend Carrie always talks about the word fun, like she just doesn't connect with the word fun. Of course, she can have fun, but it looks so different to what most people would call fun. And for me, the word sexy looks so different from what people would imagine a woman feeling sexy to be. Now, of course, I realize now it's because I'm not really a woman, but figuring that out then wasn't really an option. I didn't have the word non-binary. Going forward a couple of years to high school, I would always tell my friends, I really wish I had a beard. Like, I just want a beard. And I didn't know if I meant it or if I was joking, but it came from me. It came from an internal place of like, that would be interesting to understand, what is it like to have a beard? So plenty of women have beards. I'm pretty sure by the end of high school, I was aware of the term gender fluid because I really felt like I didn't feel female necessarily. Like I never really had like gender dysphoria to the point where I couldn't look at myself naked, right? Because that's really true for a lot of trans people. I'm more. So there are days when calling me female, a woman, she doesn't feel right. It feels like, that's not what I am today. There are days when it feels okay, when I'm like, yeah, I want to look more feminine today, or I want to embrace that today. And then there are days where I am definitely definitely a dude. I have my man days, and I have the energy and the feeling internally of a man. Now, I have never wanted male genitalia, but the feeling inside of me is male. And I love those days. And I have so many people in my life who accept that and love that and call me dude and call me sir. And it feels so good to be called that. And so much so that I've gone through a couple periods where I'm like, am I a trans man? Am I a trans man? Am I a man? And I've always come out the other side just realizing, no, I'm not only a man. I'm not only a woman. I'm gender fluid. I'm non-binary. It's funny because I was accepting of that for a long time before I even realized that that meant I'm trans, because I hadn't realized that trans just simply means that you don't agree with the gender marker on your birth certificate, right? So the gender you are assigned at birth. And funny how you are assigned a gender, right? That is all trans means. That's it. I think right now in our society, it means so many things to so many people that just aren't true. They're just stories, right? So a label, it just means whatever society deems it to mean, whatever psychiatrists deem it to mean, whatever your family, you know what I mean? Like, you can be labeled without agreeing with it. And for me, trans is just a word. It's like, it will never encompass my feelings about myself. I'm autistic, but I'm not just autistic. There's so much more to me than that. Editing Rachel here. I just want to make it clear that the reason I'm railing against labels a little bit is just because it takes away from the person's actual experience. I'm happy to be labeled trans. I'm happy to be labeled autistic, but it separates my actual experience from myself, and it allows that experience of mine to be weaponized, right? To be convoluted. And that's the part that I'm not into, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with any label anyone chooses. It's just that once it is a label, it opens it up for other people. And that's the part that I don't always love. Do you know what I mean? Like, labels are made up. Gender is made up. It's reinforced socially. It's stereotyped. Growing up, people are surrounded by that stereotype. And so much of us, we fall into it, and we think there's something wrong with us if we don't live up to that stereotype. What I'm trying to get at is, I do follow Jeffrey Marsh. Jeffrey Marsh identifies as trans non-binary. And that really threw me, because I was like, I didn't know non-binary was trans. And then I looked it up, and I got the definition that I just gave you. And that kind of like sunk in. And I was like, okay. And I told my partner, like, oh, did you know that being non-binary means that I'm trans? And he was like, oh, okay. All right. So the whole non-binary trans thing was interesting to realize. Like, I'm part of this. Like, this is relevant to me. I am in this community, and I'm happy to be in this community because I love trans people. I love self-awareness. I love being true to yourself. I love all of the things that are necessary to understand that you're trans. And yes, it's just a community of people because of that term. It doesn't mean every single person is a saint. It does not mean that they're all criminals, right? It's 1.6% of the population. There's going to be a representative sample in there. But I have to say, from all the trans people that I've met over the years, and I've been friends with so many wonderful trans people, they're just freaking people, right? They're just people who are facing a lot of discrimination and a lot of misunderstanding and now criminalization just for being themselves, just for existing. That's really what made me record this episode is, like, what is the big fucking deal, right? It's just a label. It's just people going through something really difficult. Really, really, really difficult. I mean, if you think about it, most people don't like rocking the boat. Most people don't like upsetting others. They don't like putting demands on others. They don't like asking for favors, right? When's the last time you asked a favor of someone? Maybe you are like that wonderful extroverted person who just does it all the time, but most of the people I know hesitate. They don't want to burden anyone, right? And so think about realizing, oh my God, I'm in the wrong body. If you are feeling, regardless of what you're transitioning to, like you're in the wrong body, what are you asking of people? You're asking a lot, perhaps, right? Support for gender reassignment surgery, support for medical interventions like testosterone or estrogen, mental health counseling, birth certificate change, license change. There are a lot of steps, name change. That's a lot for someone to go through and to ask of others. And I'm not saying that they should feel bad about that. But what is the reality? It's really hard to do. It's really, 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 really hard to ask that of other people. And so instead of gracefully backing this community with love and support and, help, we haven't even talked about how much it costs to be a trans person, they're being criminalized and they're you can't do this to people, right? You can't just decree that a whole swath of people doesn't exist, but that's what's happening right now. A lot of people are on board with this idea that non-binary people don't exist and that trans people don't exist or are criminals. So obviously, I'm not one of them. Hopefully, you're not one of them too. I'm going to just extend the benefit of the doubt to you because you're here. You wouldn't be here if you felt otherwise. I went to a hearing yesterday in Utah about legislation meant to exclude trans people from sex-designated areas in dorm rooms and in schools in general, changing rooms, bathrooms, and government buildings. It was really eye-opening because the first public comment was from a young woman who had gone to college and was assigned a roommate who is trans. And for a while, this person who was speaking couldn't figure out if they were trans. So obviously, they weren't wagging their penis around, right? And then when they, I guess, made the big assumption that this person was trans, they made a big stink about it and decided that they didn't feel safe or comfortable in their own home, and they got reassigned. Which, okay, you have your right to an opinion, but how that translates into legislation that bars trans people from being in gender affirming spaces, it just goes above and beyond what needs to be there, right? Like, let the schools figure it out for themselves. Let them move people around who have a problem. But I would not have a problem at all with a trans roommate, obviously. It doesn't matter what their genitalia is. People cohabitate with others all the time. Like, what about a brother and a sister, right? Like, what about a mom and a dad? It just happens all the time. And not to mention the undercurrent of most of the comments of the opposing side, of people for the bill, the people opposing trans people in these spaces, they just kept talking about, like, we got to protect our girls. Well, what about trans girls? They need it too. They need it even more. The undercurrent was that trans people are criminals. That's the undercurrent. Why do we need to legally exclude them from these spaces if they aren't criminals? There were a lot of trans speakers who were just like pouring their hearts out, sharing why this is such a problem, why this point of view is wrong, why it's a problem, why we should be supporting trans people. But, I live in Utah, and we did have 2 Democratic House representatives there who voted to oppose the bill, but 11 of the other House representatives passed it on. I mean, I wasn't surprised, but I also feel like I feel like I'm watching I'm watching something unfold that it has a lot of momentum. This hatred, this misunderstanding, like the girl who was speaking about being uncomfortable was talking about this trans woman as if they were a man pretending to be a woman. That's what they kept saying, a man pretending to be a woman. And so I wish I could like reach into her heart and let her know that that's not what is happening. It's never a man pretending to be a woman pretending to be a man, a female pretending to be all of the above, right? Like, I wish I could just like open everyone's heart and put a little glimmer of what it feels like to really be trans in there, right? To like help people understand that this is genuine. This is genuine. And this is not a problem for them. This has nothing to do with them. Even if you're living with them, it has nothing to do with them. I didn't go away to college, but I would imagine that there's not just like ritualistic naked time or spying at each other in the bathroom. Like that just doesn't happen. And if it does, it's not a trans issue, right? If you're violated by a trans person, it's not a trans issue. It's a that person issue. There are so few trans people, and if one or two of them, or a couple of them, or however many of them are actual criminals, you know, it has nothing to do with them being trans. It most likely has to do with being erased by society, with being suicidal, because 41% of trans people have attempted suicide. Think about that. 5% of foster kids are trans, when only 1.6% of them are in the entire population. So these are traumatized people. These are marginalized people. And that's nothing you can disagree with, because look at who's in charge right now and what they're saying, right? So I really want to love on this community and hopefully just share. Like, I just want to be here. I want to be here, and I want to speak up, and I want to be love, and I want to love on them. You know, if you follow me on Instagram, you might know I have an Instagram account. It was Queer Quilts at first, but I changed it to Rainbow Gay Quilts, because it just, that there's so much joy in that. And I didn't have to have any underscores in my name. And the whole point of me starting that account was because I want to make quilts for trans youth. And I also want to, if I sell any of my quilts, donate the profits to trans organizations. And I'm not doing this because of the hardships. I'm doing this because I just find joy here. I find love here. I find I'm meant to be here. And I want to support. I just want to support, you know. That's why I buy books from my local queer bookshop. It's why I make sure that I support my local queer-owned quilt shop and spread my money around where it's going to do the best good. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And as long as I live in Utah, I will be active in this community, in government, and I will show up and I will do what I can. You know, I mean, I can't go to everything, and I'm not going to commit to, like, you know, running for office or anything like that. But at least because I have the resources to be able to not have to skip work to do something like that, or like not have 4 jobs so that I can't ever recover from the trauma of hearing some of these stories. It's the least I can do, besides the fact that it feels really good. I was like shying away from a lot of this sort of activism for a long time in this community because the stories are so heavy, and I didn't know if I could handle it. I didn't know if I would be effective. I didn't know if I had anything to say, because I wasn't really embodying the fact that I am this label, right? So, and it's a scary label to have right now. It's really scary. I'm not scared anymore, but I was, you know. I do put my big old trans flag out in my yard in November. I'm part of Project Rainbow, and they come around and they put a pride flag every June, and they put a trans flag every November. But it's easy to feel scared. It's really easy to feel scared, and I don't feel scared anymore, and I don't feel timid anymore, thankfully, because I love my gender. I love feeling fluid. I love even the, I haven't even gotten into the higher dimensional aspects of it. I'm a group being. I'm more than one being. Of course I'm going to feel gender fluid. Of course I'm going to feel trans, right? Like, we're transcending this idea of gender. I think that's an incredible thing. I think it's a really honest, truthful thing. Everyone has feminine and masculine qualities and energies. And, if you think about it, it's so normalized to be like, oh, she wears the pants in the family. Well, what does that mean? Are you trans too, right? Like, who the fuck cares about the label? We are all the same thing, except that if you are transgender, you feel this to such a degree that it needs to be rectified on the physical level, right? Like, I don't need any gender reassigning surgery because I feel okay in this body. My feelings of feeling gender fluid are more internal, and I express them that way. And I also have always kind of looked, not always, but I've often looked very androgynous. So I can express myself with what is available to me without cutting off body parts or adding them, right? But a lot of people cannot function in their lives. They feel such sorrow, they feel such shame, they feel so many incredible debilitating things that they need their outsides to match their insides. And that is a medical thing. That is a real thing. And I just really hope that they all get the support that they need. Like, what is stupid guy's his decree, right? Like, what is that going to do to insurance companies, right? What is that going to do to medical leave, like all these issues that trans people are facing? How are his words going to impact them? I hope it doesn't impact them negatively, but how can it not, right? Like, I don't really get, I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going with this, but I'm just saying, even if you're not trans, which statistically you're probably not, right? Please have it in your heart that if you hear someone talking about this issue, just say something positive, right? Say something lovely. I know a lovely trans person, you can say. Anything to just break this wall of hatred and misunderstanding, I think would be great. Like, we can all do the Care Bear stare and get somewhere. We can. It's free, doesn't take a lot of energy, right? Just keep loving. Keep loving and sharing the love, and specifically sharing love for trans people, because we all need it, right? Everyone needs love. And yes, we all have access to our own love. We do. But isn't it nice when someone smiles at you or, like sends a little bit of support your way? Absolutely. So I'm looking at my notes here. I guess the only thing I didn't really cover is where the autism really comes into this. Like, autistic people cover 11% of the trans population. So obviously there's a large population of neurodivergent people who are queer. We already know this. Up to 76% of neurodivergent people are queer in some way. And so being genderqueer is part of that. I think that's because we are so internally aware, right? We feel everything. So the fact that I don't wear dresses all the time has nothing to do with being gender fluid. It has more to do with my sensory issues than anything else. Why do I dress in comfortable clothes and not skin tight, revealing things that are feminine? It's because of my sensory issues. It's not because I don't want to wear that stuff. In fact, I love fashion. I would love to wear more interesting clothes, but I hate the way my legs feel when they rub together, and I hate the way tight clothing feels, so I don't wear it unless I'm working out. So there's a lot to this conversation, right? So if more neurodivergent people are trans, well, where's the support for that too? How can we support people who have gender questionings, gender knowings that they're in the wrong body, right? How can we support people who need mental health services to figure this out? Some of us don't need to be in a different body, but we need help figuring out how we really feel about ourselves, because it's hard to step out of our socialization. It's hard to step out of the stereotypes. I just, more love. And if you want to support your trans communities, your trans charities, organizations, people specifically, please do. Please go for it. And if you want to connect with me on this issue, then you can. And if you want to follow Rainbow Gay Quilts on Instagram, please go and check us out. Okay, my friends. Well, as you know, if you follow me on Instagram, my pronouns are she, they, he, and you can call me dude and sir anytime. You don't have to know if I'm having a dude day or not because I always appreciate it. So lots and lots and lots of love, everyone, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.